And when I got arrested, because I'd gotten like water all over them before they threw me down and stuff. But anyway, so I'm wearing these like stinky, nasty clothes because I just changed out of the orange jumper into this, and it's like I'm in their care. But I leave there and I go to this facility, and like I remember pulling up in the driveway. They tell you certain things, like because my story was so it was like such a big thing. It wasn't like I just did drugs and then I'm at the facility, but I burglarized the pharmacy. Like I was a hero in the jail. Like everybody had,
Yeah, brother.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. They had seen it on the news. They had seen it
Yeah.
in the paper, like I was a big deal or whatever in the criminal world. Um, they wanted to know where I hid the rest of it, so when I got out, and
Yeah.
they wanted to know all this stuff that didn't exist. But anyway, he tells me don't share any of that. Just come in, be humble. Stick to yourself. Do what we ask you to do, and you'll be fine. Well, I remember pulling up in the driveway, and I said, "Okay, I see." I'm talking to God. I'm like, "Okay, I see that you're working in my life. I see that you're doing something." Um, and I don't know what you're doing, but obviously everything that I've done up to this point has been wrong because I've screwed up everything. So I'm just going to be a blank slate and you teach me how to live. Just teach me. And that's what I did.
Mhm.
From day one, I was a blank slate. And for the whole next year, I fell in love with God, learned his word. I read his word every day. And then I started discovering that there were passages in the Bible that you could actually live out. I know that sounds simple, or now it sounds simple to me, but at the time I'd always seen the Bible as like something that was talked about on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It was an old book, with old stories, but to really recognize that you could take this
Some
and
principles. Yeah.
yeah, and like turn around and live it out. I was blown away because they worked. It was
Right.
like, oh wow, okay.
Wow.
So don't worry about anything, but seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto me. Okay,
Yeah.
and so like I did that, and everything
That
started working out,
that has
and
been one of the most powerful things because being an entrepreneur is scary
yeah,
because when you rely on somebody's paycheck and I have for so long that all of these new scriptures they're becoming real and relevant to me where before it was like not so much, but that's one of them. It's like, so I'm not supposed to worry. And it's weird because everything always works out. And I did worry. I worried myself into a freaking bleeding ulcer, right?
yeah,
But when I begin to put into practice, the word like you're talking about, then there's peace and a calmness. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones with that, it says, "Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and
Prayer and
supplication
supplication.
with
Mhm.
thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard
Guard
your
your
hearts
heart
and your
and mind.
minds
Yeah.
in Christ Jesus." And like I would be worried. One of the real big pitfalls with a lot of the guys, because I was at a facility, all male facility, faith-based facility. There were about 50 men there. I started off just doing odd jobs because to earn your keep, so to speak, like that's why it didn't cost, because you were going to work. But it's an offshoot of Teen Challenge. I don't know if you've ever
Oh,
heard of Teen
very
Challenge, but
familiar. I interviewed the castle over in Riverside, California. It
okay,
was
cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, they use Teen Challenge's curriculum,
Uh-huh.
and they send people to Cape Girardeau to finish up, which is Teen Challenge's U.S. headquarters is in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and or one of them anyway. But they they use their curriculum, but keep most of the guys that are essential there on campus. And I couldn't leave the state, so I stayed there instead of going to Cape. But for that year, I was trained on Teen Challenges curriculum, and I remember watching guys start to get worried about situations happening with their family or, with even the world. It was the craziest thing. Like we were talking about going to war with Syria or something during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And like 3 guys left because they thought we were fixing to go to war with Syria and they wanted to be with their families. Like they used anything at all
Anything. Yeah.
as an
I
excuse to
totally
go
get
back
that.
out. And that verse, like that section of verses, totally changed everything for me. It was like, okay, don't be anxious about anything. So don't sweat any of it. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, okay, I got it. So I just started praying about everything and thanking God for answering the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping my eyes and my ears open to his answers so that I understood what he was doing. And it just changed. Everything changed. Like no more anxiety, no more stress, no more worry. No, I still everybody deals with that kind of stuff, but it wasn't to the degree that it once was.
Yeah.
And
Dominating your life. Right.
exactly,
Right. Mm-hmm.
exactly. But that was a beautiful time in my life. I was the head cook. So I cooked breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 50 men. And it was the perfect position for me because my schedule was the exact opposite of everybody else's because I had to have the food ready. So I got to have the whole kitchen to myself, other than the other guys that helped me prepare the meals and serve the meals and clean up after. But I got to have the whole kitchen to myself. So I would literally just sit in the kitchen and read the Bible. And there was a couple other books that I read while I was there outside of the Bible, but it was just it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. God
Yeah.
knew what I needed. And I remember telling people that the man I was after 3 months in there was nothing compared to the man that I was after 6 months. And then the man that I was at 6 months was a child compared to the man I was at 10 months.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing, this exponential growth we experience when we
yeah,
just get in there and get serious, man. It's amazing.
it is. It really is. I recommend, like, I've got several people now that reach out to me. I do counseling and mentorship. And, there's families man, addiction's such a big deal now. It's in every family. It don't matter what the income level, where they live. Like everybody knows somebody that's either addicted or in recovery.
Yeah.
And, they'll reach out to me and they'll say, okay, I think I'm going to send him to this 30-day treatment. I was like, look, it's worked for some people. I'll say that, but send them to the longest one possible because they're going to hate that, but it is the very best thing for them.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was a good thing that I was court ordered to that year because there were days that I wanted to leave. But I knew that if I left, I was going to prison. So it was better just to stay. But I tell people
Right.
all the time, look, get them court ordered to a year-long program because
Yeah.
you're totally different 3 months in than you are 6 months and
Yeah.
9 months. And, I've just taken that and I've ran with it. My wife has run alongside me, and that's been very, very helpful. She's been such a blessing. God put exactly the right woman in my life who stood with me. Although she was involved, her dad was pressuring her to divorce me and, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
she stood by my side the whole way through. And she's been a huge, huge encouragement. So
That's awesome.
it's been awesome. But today, though, just to kind of finish this off, I graduated from there and went to court. I did get put on drug court, which was the best thing because it gave me a system of accountability. Even though I'd been in there and I'd fell in love with Jesus and, been doing this for a year and had all this clean time, it was good because I was out in the world again. And I wasn't in that spiritual bubble of being in a
Yeah.
facility, and you're faced with all the problems of the world. Now you've got bills and you've got more stress and all this stuff. So having that 3 years of accountability was amazing, knowing that I was going to get drug tested 3 or 4 times a week, at least twice a week. it was really, really good. But I went through drug court. I graduated from there, and so my record has been expunged. While I was on drug court, I knew that I had been called into the ministry. And so I started serving as a helper in the youth group where I was at. And then I took a youth pastor position at another church, served there for 4 years. I recently stepped down from that a few months back. And now I've started doing what I'm doing now with the
Yeah.
Unshakable Life. Now I have submitted myself to another local church. I believe it's important to be under the authority of a local pastor and have a local body. And so we do have a local church that we attend regularly. And in January, I'll be starting my biblical counseling certification.
Nice.
And it's the most highly sought after, most difficult certification you can get when it comes to biblical counseling. But I'm excited about it. I'm going to specialize in addiction, marriage counseling, and reconciliation.
Nice.
But I should be finished with that sometime either in the middle or towards the end of next year, because it's a lot. It just depends on how quick I can get after it. But
Yeah.
once I finish the counseling certification, I plan on going full time into counseling and having my own practice. And
That's
so
awesome.
doing the Unshakable Life and all the things involved with that on Facebook, Instagram, the podcast, YouTube channel, and then having my own private practice where I'll do something kind of like this, where I can do counseling over the internet and
Yeah.
do counseling, one-on-one counseling in person, and do group events and stuff like that, retreats.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely got the same mindset.
Yeah.
Hey, what advice would you give somebody just starting out this journey? Because I know they might be looking at their life and they've made a couple steps in the right direction, and they're kind of wobbly, and they just need encouragement and support. Like what advice would you give just starting out?
Well, you're talking about starting out in reference to
just kind of like recovery. Yeah, they're just coming into it.
Absolutely. If you're a man or woman of faith, I would highly recommend finding a local mentor, somebody that you can just get in there with every single day. Every time you're struggling, you can pick up the phone and call them or text them or meet them for coffee or whatever. A mentor will totally change your life. That's one of the things that I still have to this very day. I'm 7 years in, and it's life changing. But as a companion with that, because your mentor would tell you this, but stay in God's word every single day, every day without fail, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But coupling that with prayer, it's kind of like, I don't know. One of my mentors told me a while back, it's been years ago, if you could, I usually draw it out for people, but I don't know how well you'd be able to see it here. But if you had like a circle in the middle, and if you could just draw layers of circles around that little dot in the center, and imagine that each one of those layers is a protection against relapse.
That's good.
And
that's
the very center dot is relapse. The more layers you have, the less likely you are to relapse, and the more joy and purpose you're going to have in your life. Some of those layers will be real easy to break. Like your family probably didn't stop you from using before, but your family's still a layer. So like maybe your wife is a layer, your kid is a layer, or kids are a layer. Your local church is a layer. Your local Bible study or NA or AA meetings. I have no problem with NA or AA meetings. They're good. They serve a certain purpose, and they have some really good knowledge in there. It's kind of like anything else. Eat the meat, spit out the bone. But they have some really, really good stuff. But anyway, each one of those layers, if you can imagine a traumatic